to give the floor to the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary, Péter Szijjártó. You have the floor, sir.
Excellency, Mr. President, Excellencies, dear colleagues. History usually identifies certain periods with the major developments and phenomena happening during that given period of time. If we pose the question, which development or which phenomenon would history identify the current period of time we have been living in, then the answer is pretty obvious, that it is going to be the huge migratory waves which we experience globally, with which history will identify the current time we have been living in. The huge migratory waves which impose significant security risk almost everywhere in the world. Huge migratory waves which destabilized a number of countries during the last years. Huge migratory waves which caused serious political debates globally. Huge migratory waves which have the consequence that threat of terror is more serious than ever, even in those parts of the world where this had not been the phenomenon before. Migratory waves which are not beneficial for anyone. Migratory waves are definitely not beneficial for those who have to risk their own lives in order to get to another place of the world. And migratory waves are definitely not beneficial for those countries which must host big number of people coming from different cultures. Huge migratory waves which only lead to creation of parallel societies with very serious security implications. Mr. President, dear colleagues, I'm coming from a Central European country through the territory of which 400,000 illegal migrants have marched through in the year 2015. These migrants have violated our borders. They have disrespected our regulations, our culture, the way we live our life. These migrants attacked the police. They rejected any kind of cooperation with the local authorities. They have occupied public areas. They have threatened people and families. So we Hungarians, we do have an experience about illegal migration from first hand. We have not seen it in television. We have not heard it from storytellers. We have a first-hand direct experience. And based on that, I can tell you that it is no wonder that there are big debates going on globally how to handle this phenomenon. Unfortunately, I have to tell you that European Union has failed while looking for an answer to this challenge. And European Union has gave a very bad answer, because instead of concentrating on how to stop migratory flows, European Union concentrated on how to encourage and how to manage the flows. And this is basically a policy of invitation and an encouragement for further migratory waves to be launched. And you might know that European Union wanted to introduce a system of obligatory quotas to distribute migrants among the EU member states. Those countries, among them Hungary, which rejected this approach, have been blackmailed and punished. When European Union dealt with migration, it has turned out to be a very unsuccessful and harmful approach. Because if you have a look at the recent years in Europe, you see that there were more than 30 major terrorist attacks committed by persons with a migratory background since 2015. where more than 300 people were killed and more than 1,000 injured. And that had not been the phenomenon in Europe before. European institutions in Brussels kept on saying that it was impossible to stop migration. But this is not true. The truth is that migratory waves can be stopped. And we Hungarians have proved it. With the assistance of 3 Central European countries, the Czech Republic, Slovakia and Poland, and with spending more than €1 billion and building a fence on our southern border and having police and military there, we have proved that yes, it is possible to stop the migratory waves and it is possible to protect the borders of the given countries. And very recently, Italy, the Minister of Interior of the Italian government, has made an attempt to stop migratory waves on the maritime route. And instead of being praised, he was attacked very severely, like Hungary. So based on experiences of the last years, international efforts should aim to stop the migratory flows. And those policies which encourage further migratory waves, these are harmful, thus must be ended immediately. With respect to international law, international organizations should make it very clear that migration is simply not a fundamental human right. It's not a fundamental human right to pick a country where one would like to live in, and in order to get there, violate series of borders and ignore national and international regulations. This is not a fundamental human right. Unfortunately, just like some EU officials, United Nations officials suggest a false context, as if migration was a fundamental human right. But this is not true. This is not the case. And regardless of the global events recently which have proved that migration is a dangerous and an unfavorable phenomenon and poses serious security challenges to many regions of the world, UN officials tend to speak about migration as a source of prosperity, innovation, and global wealth, as if migration would be the best thing that has ever happened to humanity. But this is a false and biased position. False and biased. That's why Hungary strongly opposes this position. Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues, the United Nations is currently preparing to approve the Global Compact on Migration. I can tell you this is the worst possible thing United Nations can do regarding answering this challenge posed by migration. Unfortunately, United Nations is preparing to commit the same kind of mistake which was committed by the European Union. So it is not without a good reason that the United States have left the negotiation process at the very beginning, and the Hungarian government has also decided to disassociate because we do not accept the principle of the Global Compact on Migration, we do not accept the Migration Compact itself, and we will not take part in the approval mechanism, as we have stated that we absolutely do not look at it as it was an obligation on us. The Global Compact on Migration is a strongly biased, unbalanced, and extremely pro-migration document. That's why it's very dangerous. And this will cause many harms to the world by encouraging further massive and illegal migratory waves. We strongly disagree with the basic approach of the Global Compact on Migration, which tried to portray migration as if it was defining the future of our globalized world and making us all countries of origin, transit, and destination. Well, Hungary does not want to be any of these three. We believe exactly to the contrary, that international community must respect sovereignty of the countries. International community must respect the rights of the states to put safety and security of its own citizens to the first place. And the international community must respect the rights of the countries to decide whom they let enter the territory of the given countries and whom they do not allow to enter the territory of the given country. and all countries, all nations have the right to decide with whom they would like to live together. International community should and must support countries to safeguard their historical, religious, and cultural heritage, and social structure as well. And international community absolutely must not put pressure on any countries to get rid of its values, its heritage, and must not put pressure on any of the countries to change these phenomena. The Global Compact on Migration, unfortunately, suggests as migration would be the best answer to the challenges regarding demography and labor market. We strongly disagree with that. We believe, to the contrary, that international community must respect the sovereign right of every country to make their own decisions regarding their own economic and social policy, which is supposed to be the most successful for that given country. And the international community must respect the sovereign right of the countries to control their own policies regarding the labor market regulations, regarding the economic policies, and addressing the demographic trends. Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, the Global Compact on Migration suggests that border protection measures of certain countries should be judged upon human rights basis. We find this approach extremely dangerous and harmful. And that's why we strongly reject that. And we believe to the contrary. We believe that protection of borders is a national security issue. And protection of a border is the obligation of every single country. Let me underline, every state has the right and responsibility to control their own border. The international community must support every state to successfully carry out their border control responsibilities. The international community must make it clear that illegal border crossing is a serious criminal offense. We must terminate policies that either encourage or mitigate illegal border crossing and those who commit this offense. Crossing borders should only be possible with full respect of international and, in the meantime, national regulations. The violation of such regulations must result in serious consequences. Mr. Chair, dear colleagues, the Global Compact on Migration also suggests that a multicultural society is by definition more valuable or better than a homogeneous society. This is a definition, this is an approach which we again strongly reject, because it must be left up to the decision of the respective nations whether they think the multicultural society is more valuable or a homogeneous society is more valuable. And we Hungarians do not think that our society would be less valuable or worse than any other society which consider themselves as multicultural. But putting all these together, the biggest problem is that although the text of the Global Compact on Migration says that the compact places individuals at its core, it is unfortunately not true. The truth is that the compact takes only the rights and interests and well-being of migrants into consideration and does not say anything, absolutely anything, about the really existing fundamental human rights of those people who would like to live their lives in their homes under safe and secure circumstances. I would like to make it clear that Hungary establishes its migration policy on common sense. We don't want to see the events of 2015 to be repeated in Hungary. For us, security and safety of Hungary and the Hungarian people is the #1 issue. Security first, if you wish. We keep on protecting our border strongly and strictly. And we will not allow anyone to enter illegally to the territory of Hungary. Instead of looking at migration, we will continuously modernize our education system, and we will help families to be able to raise more kids to address challenges of labor market and demography in the meantime. And we will preserve Hungary as a Hungarian country which is proud of its history and heritage. And we urge international community not to encourage further migratory waves to be launched, but to stop the migratory flows now. The international community must recognize that every person has the right to live in his or her homeland in peace and security. If it is not possible, we have to help them to live as close to their homes as it is possible in a dignified manner until they can return to their homes. Instead of suggesting to people to take the life risk while hitting the road, instead of suggesting to people to pay millions of euros for services of smugglers' networks, instead of suggesting to people to leave their homes, we should bring help where it is needed. And Hungary helps the Christian communities in the Middle East. We spend multiple millions of euros on reconstructing torn down houses, on building schools, covering medical expenditures of hospitals, and giving scholarships to youngsters in the region. And as the church leaders coming from the Middle East ask us usually, not to encourage their members of their communities to leave, but to help them to be able to stay where their communities have been living for centuries or even for a long time. Here I would like to take the opportunity to inform you that Hungary will not support to approve the Global Compact on Migration because this is against the national interests of our country. We will never give up our sovereign right that it is exclusively the Hungarian people who have the right to make a decision about the future of Hungary, about our country. And we will always stick to this right of ours. Thank you for your kind attention.
Doy las gracias.
I would like to thank the Minister for Foreign Affairs and Trade of Hungary. And it's now my pleasure to give the floor to His Excellency Gilles Tonelli, Minister for Foreign Affairs and Cooperation of Monaco.